is something that's not good?
Sectionalism?
Sectionalism. Okay, and that's kind of where I'm pointing to right now. So as we're running through this, the first concentration is going to be on the whole combination of sectionalism. Who would this be? Jackson. Van Buren. Okay, a household name. William Henry Harrison, America's most beloved president. No. Okay. So the rise of sectionalism. Now, what are some of the issues of sectionalism that have increased sectionalism over this time frame?
Slavery.
Slavery. Okay. We go back a little bit to the Compromise of 1820, right? Missouri becomes a state. What kind of state?
Slave state.
Maine becomes a
Free
state. We draw a line. Okay, at 3630, everything south is
Slaves.
everything north is free. Okay, so we start to divide it there. So slavery becomes a big thing. What else? At least one other thing.
Tariffs.
Tariffs. Okay, good. Initially, in the tariff of 1816, did all Americans basically support the tariff?
Yes.
Yeah, they did. Okay, yay, America! Protect American business! Oh, crap. Why is my plow so expensive? Suddenly, who starts to see the disadvantages? The South. Okay? So as it comes into here, we start to see this whole idea of sectionalism. With sectionalism, there are little, trailers that go along with it. And part of it's going to be the idea of states' rights. Okay, now, is the idea of states' rights new? No, it goes all the way back to the Articles of Confederation, right? State supremacy. Okay, the idea of federalism. Who has more power? We think about it, we have the Alien and Sedition Acts passed under Adams. Okay, Jefferson and Madison counter with these acts called the Virginia and Kentucky Resolutions. The Virginia and Kentucky Resolutions espouse a philosophy known as what? Nullification. Okay, and what exactly is nullification?
That 2/3 of the states or more vote that something is unconstitutional, nullifies it.
Or even then, even an individual state, if they don't like it, should the individual state have the right to say no? Exactly. That's what nullifying means. Okay, so each state can then say, you know what, I don't like that federal law. It doesn't work for me. So we started to see how the nation then balances in the two different directions. Okay, this would be Andrew Jackson, President of the United States. This would be John C. Calhoun from South Carolina, Vice President of the United States. Okay, both are Southerners, both are slave owners. Historically, has Jackson been a states' rights supporter? Yes. Is John C. Calhoun a states' rights supporter? Yes. Okay. However, Jackson is in an interesting position now. He's now the what? President. So he has to keep whose interest at heart? Everybody's. Now, Calhoun and his followers have a plan. What they want to do is they want to get Jackson to admit publicly that he's a strong supporter of states' rights. Okay? So what they do at what was known as the Jefferson Dinner. Okay, people would get together, the dignitaries would get together, and they would have a wonderful dinner, and then they would toast the nation. The Calhoun supporters got together and said, let's get him. Jackson finds out about it. Because he's supposed to make a toast, okay, about the country. So Jackson gets up, okay, stands before, okay, tinks on his glass, raises his glass, and says, our federal union, it must be preserved. What happens? Calhoun poops kitties. Okay, why?
Because he didn't trick him.
He doesn't. Okay, the one thing that you're not going to do to Andrew Jackson is back him into a corner and make him say something that he did not believe in. So Jackson basically takes the opposite stance and becomes a strong supporter of what?
Federalism.
Okay, federalism, of unionism, okay, of the federal government. The next person to toast is John C. Calhoun. Okay, as he's making his toast, his hand is visibly shaking, okay, because he's so, agitated about the whole thing. His toast in response is the Union next to our liberty most dear. And then he goes on to describe how the states should have the ultimate authority. what do we start to see developing then between the president and the vice president?
Rivalries or
Exactly.
Was Calhoun Jackson's running mate, or did he win second?
Running mate. We're into the time of running mates. And John C. Calhoun fully expects that when Jackson steps down, what's he going to become? President. Okay? However, that's not going to be the case. Then another example, right? This would be Daniel Webster. This would be a gentleman out of South Carolina by the name of Robert Hayne. Okay, this is one of the most fierce battles, eloquent battles, in the history of the United States Senate. It's known as the Webster-Hayne debate. It starts off over the issue of westward expansion and land. However, it's going to deteriorate into slavery. Also, this idea about states' rights and nullification. Okay, South Carolina is like the hotbed for what they call the nullies, or the nullifiers. Right? In this debate, Webster is going to make one of the most eloquent statements in defense of the country. Liberty and union, now and forever, one and inseparable. This will be repeated by school children for like the next 7 decades. Okay, it's in textbooks and things like that, and kids are made to memorize and recite this at will. I would probably write these down one at a time. I don't know, I didn't set it. And then we'll talk about each one of them. Okay, does anybody remember anything about the tariff of 1828?
Wasn't it the first tariff that was solely made to protect U.S. businesses?
No, that was the tariff of 1816, but is it designed to do that?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Okay, and it drastically raises tariff rates. All right, now, who's going to freak out? The South. You're like, wait a minute, this is well over 30% increase in the cost of these goods. That's ridiculous. We don't get anything out of it. Okay, they refer to the tariff of 1828 as the
tariff
tariff of
abominations.
abominations. Okay, and they're totally opposed to it, except it kind of like mellows out. Then, in 1832, a new tariff is passed. Now it lowers the rates, but not enough to appease the South. The South wanted much, much more. The North is still clamoring for protective tariffs. Okay.
Was the tariff of 1828, was that the one that was like 45% or?
I can't remember. Do you remember what the exact percentage was? Ever then? I don't know. It was very excessive and stuff like that.
So
Okay.
it's raised the what was the raise?
Which one?
1828.
Raised tariff rates.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. 32 lowers it, but not enough to appease the South. Okay. They immediately start freaking out about the whole thing, clamoring as far as talking about nullification. We don't have to follow this. A paper is going to be written known as the South Carolina Exposition. And this was penned anonymously, talking about how the states have the right to nullify federal authority. Okay, and state supremacy. Except everybody who read it knew that it was whose?
Calhoun's.
John C. Calhoun's. So here we have Calhoun writing about nullification, right, at the same time that his boss is supporting what? Okay, unionism and things like that. Okay? The Webster-Hayne debate is also going to occur during this time frame. Jackson threatens to march an army down to South Carolina and hang all of them from palmetto trees. Right? He's like, no, you will not do this. So we start to see here what could have actually been the opening shots of the Civil War. However, in steps Henry Clay, Mr. Compromise. Okay? He will then propose the compromise tariff of 1833. Okay, which gives a gradual reduction of the tariff rates to an acceptable level for the South. The South then backs down. However, what is passed to give teeth to Andrew Jackson and the tariff?
That states aren't allowed to.
The force bill. Okay, Congress passes a force bill authorizing the president to collect taxes basically at the point of the bayonet. Okay, one of the things that is going to be, this isn't really so much part of the nullification crisis, but it continues kind of like as far as the breakup of the Jackson cabinet during this time period. Is going to be something known as the Peggy Eden affair. Okay, that the book doesn't talk about. Right? Now, Peggy Eden supposedly was very beautiful. Right? And she and I think her family used to run a boarding house. But it was rumored that Peggy Eden served more than fried chicken, if you know what I mean. Okay? So, she kind of had this reputation. Does everybody actually know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, just curious. Last period, there were people like, fried chicken? I don't get it. What's wrong with fried chicken? Thank you, Captain Obvious. Okay? But all depends upon the breast or the thighs, right? So, now, when you're looking at this, okay, she is going to marry a man by the name, I believe, of William Eden, who was a powerful U.S. Senator. He also happened to be a friend of Andrew Jackson. When Jackson becomes president, he says, hey, how'd you like to be my Secretary of War? He's like, okay. So then he becomes part of Jackson's cabinet as the Secretary of War. And he brings his pretty little wife with him. So now she becomes part of the social life and the social elite of Washington, D.C. Except there's a problem. What problem do you see?
She's a prostitute.
She's not a prostitute.
She offers her. Well, if you're
It's all we don't know whether she did. Maybe she had good fried chicken. I don't know.
well, if she's doing more than fried chicken, there's something going on.
Well, that was a rumor. I'm not saying anything. I didn't know her. Okay, so when she becomes part of the cabinet, she's expected to do certain things. Okay. Get your mind out of the gun. She has to attend parties, right, and balls. Okay, you know, they go and the dancing and the cotillions and all those different kind of things, right? Now, these are very social affairs, okay, that were attended by the prettiest and the best of Washington society. Except, when word gets out about her, what do the socialites start doing?
Shunning.
They start shunning her. Okay, they're like, especially the wife of John C. Calhoun. She is a South Carolina blue blood. I'm a lady. I can't be associated with her. I'm turned away. Right? Okay? So then everything just starts to polarize. Right? The cabinet members start having to like pretty much hide behind their wives. They're like screaming at it, we can't go to that. Okay? Affairs and invitations are sent out, except she doesn't get one. She sends invitations out, nobody shows up. See? Feel bad now calling her a prostitute.
No.
Now, when this happens, obviously who's going to be mad?
She is.
Okay? Her husband is going to be angry. Who else?
She is.
Jackson. Now, stop and think about this for a minute. Okay? Why would Andrew Jackson be especially mad?
Because he knows them and they're friends.
His wife, he thinks his wife was killed by stuff like that.
Exactly. Okay, in the election of 1828, all that mudslinging, okay, public people accusing his wife of being a whore.
Oh, didn't that put his mom?
Okay, and things like that. So all of this kind of stuff, Jackson remembers. He's like, oh, no, no, no. So he then rushes to her side as her defender. Martin Van Buren, who doesn't have a wife, can also defend her. So the cabinet is now polarized. Right? Everybody can't get anything done. Calhoun has to step in and defend his wife. So then you have the president and the vice president, who are already at odds, are now boom like this. Van Buren proposes that he resign and that the rest of the cabinet do the same thing because nothing's getting done. So he does that. He becomes the ambassador to Great Britain. Okay, the rest of the cabinet pretty much resigns. A few months later, John C. Calhoun steps down as vice president. Right? Jackson says, hey, Mr. Martin Van Buren, would you like to be my vice president? He says, sure. He becomes vice president, and then a few years later, he becomes president of the United States. John C. Calhoun never gets the opportunity back. Okay? How would you expect about that? Okay, how would you describe Andrew Jackson's Indian policy?
He hated him.
It felt like
Kill 'em.
also
Like,
metal.
Not thinking.
you would probably blow Nazis up if you get a chance to.
You're pretty brutal today. All right, before Jackson was president, he's going to be part of a organization, a company designed to conduct a punitive expedition against the Creek. You know what a punitive expedition is?
Kill 'em.
To punish. The Creeks are in rebellion in something known as the Red State Uprising. Okay? They have attacked and then slaughtered an American fort, killed men, women, and children. Jackson and his volunteers, militia, are going to go down there and set it right. And I think I talked to you yesterday about his Indian son.
Yeah.
Okay, it was during this conflict that he's actually going to adopt the young child. And then he's going to continue to go on to fight the Creek and put down the uprising. It's also that time frame where the book references that he goes into Florida and he hangs the Spanish authorities. Okay, causes all the mischief down there. One of the interesting things that happened that the book doesn't talk about is that while his troops are down there, they actually come across an abandoned Spanish fort, except it's not abandoned. We talked about how runaway slaves would escape down into Florida for sanctuary, and how like the Indians would attack and then come back down. Well, they were starting to evolve into a very unique culture down there because they were intermingling. Okay, you had the African, you had the Native American races and things like that. They were like bringing them in as part of their tribes. So they came across this old fort, right? Except it wasn't abandoned. It was manned by Indians and escaped slaves. Okay, several hundred of them. And they had rebuilt the walls, fortified the fort. And the Americans are like, holy crap, they've got a fort. Okay, what are we supposed to do? So what they do is they had cannon, okay, and they would take what was called a hot shot. And they would take a cannonball and they would put it in a fire. And they would take it and they would drop it down the cannon and they would shoot it. Okay, and what the shot was supposed to do is what? Okay, yeah, exactly, to burn through the wall. So what happened is they shot it, okay, it goes through the wall and rolls into where they had stored all the gunpowder.
Oh my god.
Boom. The whole thing blows.
Fail.
Okay, the American troops would basically just be able to walk in, kill whoever they needed to, subjugate the rest, sell the survivors into slavery. Okay, a very lucky shot. Okay. You know, maybe it was a bad idea to keep all the powder where they did or whatever, but you know, sometimes you get lucky, like recovering a snap at the end of a game. Okay. What's the deal with westward expansion? The Indians are what?
In the way.
They're in the way. Okay, Jackson's idea is to remove them. Okay, so how is the problem going to be solved? By three ways. Okay, to assimilate, to move, or destroy. Those are the options, okay, for the Indians during this time from the southeast United States. Okay, do we actually try and move towards American culture and American ways? Do we try and get the heck out of the way of the freight train, or do we fight to the death? The Cherokee had been fighting since the mid-1700s. They know they can't win, so they start to move towards what?
Assimilation.
Assimilation. Okay, how do we know that they do this? Because they do things that were not natural for Native Americans, okay, during this time frame in this region. They start to have plantation-based economies. Okay, not just subsistence farming, meaning hand to mouth, but they actually start to grow crops to do what?
Sell them.
Sell. Things like
Corn. Cotton.
cotton, tobacco, okay, plantation-based crops and things like that. They also start to agree to private land ownership. Is this unique?
Yeah.
Yeah, because most Native Americans did not agree with that idea that you could actually own the land. Okay, now Native American peoples had no written language. So how did they pass down their traditions?
Stories.
Histories.
Stories.
Stories. Okay, they were oral traditions. Around the campfire, father to son, mother to daughter. They were repeated and they were repeated and they were repeated. And so one day they were what?
Written down.
Passed down, you know, to future generations. Now Sequoyah, who was a Cherokee, is going to devise a written alphabet. Okay, again, moving more towards American, okay, style of life. Since they had this plantation-based economy, okay, and they're living in the southeast, what's going to be another component that they'll also adopt? Slavery. Okay, some of the Cherokee became slave owners. One of the last Confederate generals to surrender in the American Civil War was the Cherokee. Okay, so some of the Cherokee actually fought for the Confederate States. Now, is all this accommodation and assimilation going to do them any good? No. Okay, to whites, okay, they're still in the way, they're still savages, they're still Indians. Yesterday I forgot to collect those cases. All right, there was a case called Worcester versus Georgia. What was that one?
There was a missionary who was living amongst the Cherokee, and Georgian law said that you had to have a license to live among them, but he didn't have one. None of the missionaries did. And so when they attempted to arrest him, his case went to Supreme Court, and he was, if I remember correctly, he was cleared there, but Georgian law attempted to prosecute him.
Okay.
So they were constitutional.
Exactly. Okay, when you start to look at this, right, if we come into this, okay, in Worcester versus Georgia in 1833, this is all about what the Supreme Court can and cannot do. All right? Gold is actually found earlier in the hills of Georgia. Except whose hills are they? They're the Cherokee. Okay, gold was never a blessing for the Indians. Anytime it was found, it was a curse, because in comes who? In comes the whites. Okay, to take the land, do just time and time again. Okay, so like Valerie was saying, there's a whole like different components of the case. But the bottom line is that the Supreme Court has to decide whether the state of Georgia can tell the Indians what to do. Now, John Marshall is still on the court. 33 years he's been Chief Justice. Right? So he has to decide this case. So he looks at it, and he goes, wait a minute, Georgia, you don't have the right to tell them what to do. Why not?
Because they're a separate nation.
Exactly. They're like a separate nation. States can't negotiate treaties with separate nations. Only the federal government. Once again, he affirms the whole idea of federal supremacy. So at that point, the Cherokee, they stayed, they lived, they prospered where they still live today, correct?
No.
But the Supreme Court said they could.
We're Americans.
Okay, supposedly according to like American oral tradition, okay, Jackson was supposedly said, John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. Doesn't matter whether he actually said or not. Was that pretty much what he did indeed? Yeah. Okay, it's like, okay, Supreme Court, thank you, have a nice day. Love you. Now, what are the implications for this as it relates to government? What does Jackson totally destroy? Separation of powers, checks and balances. Okay, I thought if one branch said no, that you had to listen to it. Why doesn't Congress impeach Andrew Jackson?
Because they like the idea.
Because they like the idea. They agreed with him. Okay, and their constituents liked him. Okay, the Indians have very few friends. Okay, very few friends. Is anybody doing the Trail of Tears in here for your semester now? Okay. All right. Trail of Tears, forced removal of the Cherokee to Oklahoma. Okay, over 4,000 people are going to die. Wrong time of the year. It's going to be an 800-mile march with less than less than 1,000 calories a day, closer to like 600. Okay, they're ill-equipped, ill-prepared. Some of them are going to make it to the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, where they're going to form the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians. The rest will end up settling in what is now Oklahoma. The Seminoles, where are the Seminoles located? Florida. Okay. The Seminoles are going to end up fighting one of the longest and costliest Indian campaigns in American history, in which they are never completely defeated. What's the number one thing they have on their side? Terrain. Okay, the swamps, to be able to melt back into the swamps. Okay, go places where the soldiers really don't want to go. I mean, like, getting eaten by an alligator is not in my top 10 things to do. Anybody see that picture of the giant python they killed in the Everglades the other day? It was like 20 feet long and it had just eaten a deer. I guess like pet owners and stuff like that, when they get tired of the snakes, they've been throwing their pythons and stuff in the Everglades, and now they're starting to like overpopulate. So they actually have teams going and hunting them now.
Australia.
Yeah, with the rabbits.
Yeah, the rabbits. Oh my
Rabbit
gosh.
stuff.
Did you see the pictures?
Crazy,
They're
huh?
insane.
Sometimes good ideas, you know.
Yeah, and they're like, let's bring the foxes over.
Yeah. Okay, the routes and things like that, they could have taken more of a route, okay, and stuff, but it was just bad enough. Yeah, the 5 civilized tribes here.
Praise
The
Chaco.
Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Creek, the Cherokee, and the Seminoles are going to end up moving into the wonderful mystical land known as Oklahoma. Okay, where they are promised, as long as grass grows and water flows, you shall live here forever. Or until we want the land again. All right, let's talk back Texas. Okay, in the early 1820s, Mexico wins its independence from Spain. Okay, they are now an independent nation, and they have northern provinces that are very sparsely populated. So what do you want to do? You want to populate them, but you can't get your own people to do it. That's a long way. Are you crazy? Okay, so what do they do? Yeah, right? Okay, they're going to like encourage people to come down. Now remember the Adams-Onis Treaty, okay, that we signed with Spain. The United States said, we get to buy Florida, but we promise to do what? Keep our hands off of Texas.
Wow.
Well, it was with Spain, not with Texas, right?
I mean,
Mexico.
Just
you mean
politics.
Mexico.
That's true though.
Huge land grants, thousands of acres per person. Okay, all you had to do was come down. You had to do 2 things. What was that?
Gotta be Catholic.
Okay, you had to be Catholic and swear to become a Mexican citizen. Okay, so people came down, right? Where did most of these people come from? The Southeast. Okay, Stephen F. Austin, right, and others are going to come down. Bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, and they're going to live down here, and they're going to thrive. Okay, and they bring their wagons and their horses and their mules and their children and their grits and their chitlins. Okay, what else do they bring?
Slaves.
Yep. Okay, so the big issue is what? Slavery. Okay, Mexico had emancipated the slaves in 1830. So they're like, excuse me, you can't have those. Texans are like, okay, it's all right. Okay, y'all just stay down here. We'll stay up here. Okay, and so then there starts to be friction. Austin heads down to Mexico City where he's going to be imprisoned. Okay, and what starts to happen? A rebellion.
What was the last name?
Now,
Thing?
probably one of the worst generals in all of history was a man by the name of Generalissimo Santa de Anna. Okay, he is going to organize a Mexican army of over 5,000 troops, and they're going to march up from Mexico. They're going to head into the Texas territory, okay, the province of Texas. Waiting for them is going to be a ragtag, misfit army of a bunch of Texicans. What is a ragtag?
No, like it's always like a ragtag.
Well, I guess that's true, right?
Just
Okay.
yeah.
And when they get up there, okay, the Mexican army is going to be stopped at a little place called the Alamo. All right, a little mission that has been fortified in what is now the heart of downtown San Antonio. The defenders of the Alamo are going to be less than 200 in number, right? And they're going to be pretty much hopelessly surrounded. In a dispatch, William Barrett Travis, who's the commander of the Alamo, is going to say, "I shall never surrender nor retreat. Victory or death." Now, a lot of times people talk the talk,
Yeah, you know, I'd do that. I'd fight to the death. I'd never get up.
Okay, but did they actually do it?
Yes.
Yeah, they did. Okay, has anybody ever seen the movie, The Alamo? There's like been a couple of them made.
I think.
Nobody?
I think I did.
I was watching it
I
last
might have
night.
come across it once.
This is a scene in here where the different volunteer companies are deciding whether to stay in the Alamo or to leave. Okay, two of the most famous characters that are involved in this is a man by the name of Davy Crockett from Tennessee, played by John Wayne, and then Jim Bowie, okay, the Bowie knife, okay, played by Richard Whitmark.
And
Well, Colonel Fannin isn't coming. His men were ambushed, murdered.
Okay, now he's not a very good actor, but he happens to be John Wayne's son, so it's okay.
Won't be any help. Have all volunteers assembled in the compound.
Well, that's it. I'm taking my men out, cut through to the north. You coming? Seems like the better part of valor.
Men, Jim Bonham has brought news as sad as death. Colonel Fannin has been ambushed. We can expect no help. I stay here with my command. But any of you who wish to may leave with all honor. Failing reinforcements, the Alamo cannot hold. But do not go with heads hung low. No man can criticize your behavior. Here on these ramparts, you have bought a priceless 10 days of time for Houston. You have bled the enemy army. You are brave and noble soldiers. Open the gate! May God bless you.
Okay, 3 days later, The surviving members are all going to die, okay, at the hands of the Mexican army. The Texans are going to get their revenge at a place called San Jacinto. Sam Houston and the Texas Army is going to surprise Santa Anna, literally, okay, in his bedroom slippers, okay, as they launch a surprise attack. Santa Anna will then be forced to sign a peace treaty authorizing the independence of Texas. Okay, in 1836, the Lone Star Republic is born. Okay, Texas will be an independent country for the next 9 years.
How long did it take Texas to gain independence as a country?
I think less than a year.
Did Mexico just not want to fight for it, or?
Well, they didn't really have the resources to do it and things like that. Okay, and they never actually recognized that Texas was independent. They basically considered them to be a area of their country in revolt. That's why they got so mad at the United States when we actually annexed Texas, which helped start the Mexican-American War. Okay. How many have been to Magic Mountain? Ever ridden the roller coasters, had lots of fun, okay? Right? Now, it's called Six Flags, right? Six Flags Magic Mountain, okay? It comes from the start of a place called Six Flags over Texas. Okay, so you've all been part of the culture heritage of Texas and you didn't even know it. So now, here's the $10,000 question for the day. A new Mercedes, a box of cookies. Somebody tell me what the Six Flags over Texas are.
Do we really get the price?
Of course, yeah. Or an IOU.
The Lone Star Republic flag, the Spanish flag, the Mexican flag,
The U.S. flag.
the
French flag.
and the flag of the United States.
She said that.
Oh, Britain.
Portuguese flag? Nope.
England.
Spain, it's already done.
The German.
Zambia.
No.
Russia.
Russian flag. No, no Russian flag.
Canada.
Canadian. Hey.
Indian. Like an Indian
The
flag.
Irish flag. How did you know that? Just kidding. You're wrong.
Like some sort of Indian flag? I don't know.
The Scottish flag.
Indian
Oh,
flag?
come on, you guys.
Indian flag.
Indian.
I don't know.
I have a guess you made. Okay, 1861 to 1865.
Oh, Confederate flag.
The Confederate States of America.
Oh my god.
We were close.
The Irish.
I can't believe I missed. Oh my goodness. I knew that. Oh my goodness.
I'm missing one.
That's what the Irishman in Texas said. Actually, we're going to talk about Irish in Texas. Okay, why would the United States immediately want to annex this huge tract of land?
It's land.
What?
Expansion.
Like resources. All.
It's going to upset the balance of power.
Set.
Okay, we reopen up. During the did I talk about the gag rule in here? No. Okay, during the 1830s, there was something known as the gag rule in Congress, which means that the topic of slavery was not allowed to be brought up. Okay, it's going to be taken away in I think 1841. Okay, but the whole issue of the section of balance of power. Okay, now this puts Texas in a precarious position because here they are, they're supposedly independent. Mexico wants them back. They don't have a large population. They don't have a large standing military. All right, so what they really want more than anything? Be part of the United States. Why? Because they're mainly Americans. All right, so for the next 9 years, it's kind of like going back and forth. Jackson doesn't want to do it. Van Buren doesn't want to do it. Okay, William Henry Harrison doesn't want to do it. Finally, when John Tyler becomes president, one of the last acts that he's going to do is to actually annex Texas. Okay, last few things that we want to talk about. The National Republicans are going to transition into a political party known as the Whigs. Okay, primarily founded as an Jackson Force. I almost said Phil Jackson. Probably because I'm a Laker hater. This was supposed to be my basketball tie today, since today was supposed to be the first day of the NBA season. We're sorry. It's been canceled for the first month.
Wait, why?
Where are you people?
I did art.
Did you trick or treat last night?
Yes.
Instead of reading the news? Let's do the labor contract. Teams are locked out. Okay, some of the supporters. Okay, would be supporters of Clay's American System. Okay, Southern States Writers. Okay, large northern industrialists and merchants. You're seeing a mix-up and a leftover of like Federalist beliefs, okay, as well as some Western ideals. Okay, many evangelical Protestants that were associated with the anti-Masonic Party. Okay, the anti-Masonic Party is one of the first third political parties in American history. And what do they oppose? Secret societies. Like the Freemasons. They're kind of creepy.
They're not creepy, but like, never mind. Oh, my head.
Let me guess, they're prostitutes.
You said Southern States Writers. Would that be people for rights or like?
For states' rights.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, one of the first assassination attempts is actually going to happen with Andrew Jackson. Okay, a guy who's not quite all there, who thinks he's basically like the king of America. Okay, comes out behind this a pillar, stuff like that, as Andrew Jackson is coming out of the gathering. He pulls a pistol, he points it at Jackson, and it goes click, and then misfires. He then pulls a second pistol at Jackson and goes click, and it misfires. Okay, thereby proving Andrew Jackson is protected by God.
That's
Right?
really lucky.
Right? They take the two pistols, they take them out later, okay, and they load them and they go kabam, kabam. Okay, so the odds of something like that happening are something like 1 in 50,000.
He knows.
Okay, the legacy of Andrew Jackson. We're going to expose both positives and negatives. Okay, he does bolster the power of the executive branch by doing a lot of things maybe outside of what his power actually was, whether it's ignoring the Supreme Court, the use of the veto. However, strong American presidents have a habit of doing that, including one of America's most beloved, which is Abraham Lincoln. Okay, led the common people into national politics. In the election of 1840, we start to see where politicians now start to court the common man. I was born in a log cabin. Okay, you want to have those common roots, kind of be like who? Everybody else, right? Politicians today, do they still do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, they try and come out there like, there was an ad, not in this election, but the last one, that showed Mitt Romney, and he's chopping wood, okay, and he's out there, he's sledding with the grandkids. You know how much money Mitt Romney's actually worth? Something like $120 million. He's not quite common folk, you know, he's kind of like more like me, common, but, no, 120, like, a lot. Okay, uniting people into the Democratic Party, okay, which lasts until today. Okay, prove that the common man can be trusted with the vote. Okay, that the mobocracy and things like that was more of a fallacy than anything else. What? Why are we whispering APEL? What did I say? Fallacy. I'm not supposed to say fallacy. Is that an APEL word?
Fallacy thing.
Fascinating story.
Cool
Thank
story,
you.
bro.
Thank you very much. Fallacy or fascination? Fallacy.
learn about
I got
fallacies
yelled
in
at by like
ASL.
third period because I wasn't supposed to say, what was it? What is it? No, it was something, I appropriated somebody's phrase. What does Liska say all the time?
Yeah, wait, which Liska?
Mr. Movers and shakers. I said movers and shakers. They're like, that's a cow thing. I was like, ooh. Sorry, I didn't mean to go to the math territory. I feel like cosines and tangents crawling all over my body. Give me a spray. Okay, minuses. The encouragement of the spoil system is going to last in the American political arena until the passage of the Pendleton Act in the 1870s. Treatment of the bus. What specifically does Jackson do to the bus? He destroys the Bank of the United States. How does he do it, though? When, why?
Takes out federal deposits.
Exactly. Okay, he hates the Bank of the United States. However, two people are really going to irritate him. Number one is his arch nemesis. No, Clay. Henry Clay. Yeah, poison ivy. Right? So, Henry Clay wants to support the bank, and he wants to recharter it early. Nicholas Biddle, who's the president of the bank, also wants to do this. Okay, so Jackson's, look at this, they're pushing and pushing. He's like, fine. So he takes all of the federal money out of the Bank of the United States and puts it into various state banks, which becomes known as pet banks. Okay, without those assets, can the Bank of the United States continue to exist? No. So what happens to it? Okay, it's going to go away. Okay, however, without that security, it's also going to help lead to the Panic of 1837 and the financial collapse. Also, that combines with like Jackson's insisting on hard currency as well. Obviously, maybe number one would be the treatment of Native Americans.
Are dollars really made from cotton?
That's why you can put them in the
I've heard a long time from wood for rags, so I guess you could say that. Okay, the last couple of elections, the elections of 1836. Van Buren then becomes Jackson's handpicked successor, but the problem is timing. Okay, sometimes the right man is not necessarily in the right time. Okay, Van Buren's going to come in immediately. What happens in 1837? Exactly. Okay, the panic hits, boom, bottom falls out. Very hard, very unusual for presidents to be successful and to be reelected after an economic downturn. It's only happened really twice as far as I know it. One was after the Panic of 1819 with James Monroe. He was reelected. And then the minor recession. I mean, there have been some presidents in minor recessions. Okay, Bush in 2004.
What about FDR?
Yeah, but he wasn't there when it crashed. So people saw him as more trying to fix the problem and things like that. Okay, which when we get into the election in 2012, okay, if the economy improves, who's going to be elected president?
Obama.
Yeah, I guarantee you that. I guarantee you that. Okay, if the economy starts to tumble, you might see a Republican sneak in.
I have a question. Why do they have 3 separate Whig people running?
Different areas of the country.
Okay.
Okay, okay, let's wrap this up. Okay, the 36, you'll see in here how Van Buren takes it. Number one, the Whigs tend to be split up. Okay, they don't have a solidified candidate. Okay. Richard Minter Johnson was actually a very interesting man. I don't know if I can really talk about this in the next minute. He was Van Buren's vice president. Okay, and what's interesting about him was the fact that his wife was black. Okay, at a time where this just didn't happen. Okay, she was not actually technically his wife, but more like a common law wife. She was actually one of his father's slaves, a woman by the name of Julia Chen, who he fathered 2 children by. Okay, and he was a powerful senator. He was the man who supposedly killed Tecumseh, which led him into his political fame and things like that. When he gets to Washington, he brings Julia with him, okay, and when he's a senator, she's going to die, I think like in a typhoid epidemic, something like that. He will then continue living with his daughters, and everybody's kind of like, excuse you, okay, I know you're from Kentucky and all, but okay, we don't do those things here, right? Instead of like backing off, he basically doesn't go out and secludes himself. And he was at one time mentioned as one of the possible candidates for president. 1840, William Henry Harrison, okay, is going to win. Probably one of the most interesting things or important things about the election of 1840 is this little tiny party here. Okay, what is the Liberty Party we start of?
The Republican?
Abolitionist movement.
Oh, Bill.
Okay, so we're starting to see the organization politically of the anti-slavery movement. Okay? All right, any questions? Okay, test on Thursday?